Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today, grab your sunglasses, pack your bags because we're going to the beautiful country of Thailand. Known for its culture, its beautiful food, the people, the scenery, the beaches, but we're going to be focusing on something very specific today, the betta fish. Guys, if it looks like I'm reading from a sheet today, I am. I've put a lot of research into this and I've practically written an essay, so if you catch me looking to the side reading, it's because I'm checking my notes. I really want to make sure that I get this topic right and cover everything, and I don't want to miss everything out. So yeah, today's video is perhaps going to be a controversial one, and the annoying thing about this topic is that it shouldn't be controversial. So betta fish care is sort of highly debated online in regards to what you should and shouldn't do and how you should keep them, and it's quite annoying because it shouldn't be a matter of opinion so much as fact. Obviously, some opinions aren't necessarily bad ones, but it should be very much matter of fact when it comes to the care and well-being of an animal. So I'm not a professional by any means, but I do keep betta fish. I do put a lot of research, time and effort into making sure that I can give my fish the best care possible. So today's video is going to focus on betta splendens, as they're the most popular species in the hobby. So without any further ado, let's get into betta care 101. So for those new to the hobby, betta splendens are the type that you see with the beautiful varieties of fin and colour patterns, morphology, shape, body sizes, etc. They range in quality, they range in price, and 9 times out of 10, if you go into a fish store that sells a betta fish, a betta splendens is probably what they're going to be selling. They're generally the most desired, and I'm sure you'll be able to see why. The finnage is absolutely beautiful, and as I say, the amount of colours that are available, there's obviously a fish for everybody. Veil tails tend to be the most common. They're probably the most commonly bred species, as I say, especially for the pet shop trade. It's generally males that you'll find. They tend to be the most flamboyant. They tend to have the larger ornamental fins. However, some females can have these traits, albeit perhaps a little bit rarer and maybe not quite so much exaggerated in terms of like size. So how did bettas come about? Well, in the wild, they don't look quite like this. Bettas have been selectively bred for their genetic traits to produce the type of fish that we see in the hobby today. So bettas originate from Thailand, and I believe it's the Mekong Basin, I think, that they were specifically or originally found. I might be wrong, please correct me if I am. But yeah, so the Thailand area, and Thailand was originally called Siam up until about 1939, hence the name Siamese fighting fish. And years ago, these fish would be captured, again mostly males, and put in small volumes of water together with another male and made to fight as a form of entertainment. It's 2023, and I guess making animals fight for our entertainment, I guess we haven't really progressed that much, which is sad. However, this sport became so popular that the fish's natural aggression was just something to marvel at. So people started breeding these fish, usually picking the most aggressive ones to breed with each other, which is like selectively breeding because you're more likely to produce something that is of high aggression. And before you know it, you have a fish that can fight for, you know, potentially hours rather than one that would just fight for a few minutes, which would be more standard in the wild. And what better than to watch two beautiful coloured fish fight each other? So that's where the colour variations came into it. I know I've vastly reduced the history of a fish into essentially a paragraph, but you get the idea. Aggression is something that they've always been exploited for, and again, it's something that we kind of contend with today in regards to keeping them with other fish or other females. Unfortunately today, Siamese fighting fish are considered a vulnerable species, as their habitat has pretty much been destroyed for urban development and farmland. Side note, there was a video on YouTube that I once watched of a sort of betta enthusiast from Thailand, and he'd found this stream he'd used to visit all the time, and it was just full of wild betta fish, absolutely beautiful. And it was just absolutely teeming with life. And he goes back a week later and he finds that it's been filled in with cement. Now, those betta fish won't have been relocated and rehomed or put in another river. They will have just literally sent the cement in there. So it is really sad. So conservation is something that is quite important. It's something that we should all really probably look into, especially if we are in this hobby, or just something that we should be aware of. So this does lead me to habitat. So this might be the subject that causes the most arguments, and that probably is the thing that is the most furiously debated. I'm going to start by saying categorically that betta fish are not ornaments. They are not something that you can put in a small jar or a bowl or something on your dining table. Please do not do that. There is a massive misconception of betta fish and their habitats, and it generally comes from people saying that betta fish live in puddles. Now, betta fish do not live in puddles. They do not spend their entire life living in a puddle. So betta fish occupy shallow streams, and when I say shallow, I mean it's probably going to be at least up to your knees, along with rice paddies. And again, I urge you, Google rice paddies. They're not something small, they are absolutely humongous. I think people kind of have this idea that the areas that they're from just aren't big, but they are just these vast open spaces. And again, yeah, just other sort of small streams, other slow flowing water columns that can stretch for miles. So the idea that they live in a puddle comes from the fact that Thailand and the surrounding areas can be prone to dry seasons and prone to droughts, and irregular rainfall that can last for a few months. So I'm sure I read somewhere that September to March in sort of like the Thailand area is more prone to drought, or there's more opportunity for drought. But again, correct me if I'm wrong. So when there is a drought, a betta fish can end up in a small puddle or a small body of water. However, they are very good at jumping and propelling themselves forward, especially obviously the wild types, because they have smaller tails. The selectively bred ones that we get today can jump, but perhaps not as well. So they generally jump and propel themselves forward to find like a larger body of water. But for this reason, they have developed what's known as a labyrinth organ, which allows them to breathe oxygen, and in turn allows these fish to survive in sort of hypoxic and polluted water for a short amount of time. So that is why they say that they live in puddles, but it's not a permanent thing. It's just if they have to, they can survive there for a time. But let's not forget that surviving isn't thriving. There are studies that have suggested that air breathing influences a wide range of behaviours in wild betta fish, including like territorial displays, aggression, the male-on-male encounters, courtship, breeding, parental care, and so on. It has been suggested that the evolution of the labyrinth organ is due to fighting. Now, this is interesting because when males fight, their metabolic rate will increase, and so will the need for oxygen. So the most effective way to get air was via the labyrinth organ. Now, you can't just pause mid-fight and take a breather. That's not possible. So when you see two males fight in the wild, you get what's called surfacing behaviour, where one will kind of lead the other up to the top. And obviously, because they're in a fight, they'll follow each other. And as they get to the top, they're able to breathe. So it's quite a clever tactic that allows them to carry on fighting, but also breathe at the same time. So with all this comes the question, what is the appropriate tank size? So my answer to that is always the bigger the better. I think when you want to bring any kind of animal home, like try and give it the biggest housing that you can. I would say anything smaller than 30 litres is too small. My favourite size tank is a 45p, which is what my betta fish is in, or a 60p, but I generally go for something that is like long and rectangular rather than a square. You can keep them in a cube aquarium, but they are a fish that do like to kind of swim back and forth, and that kind of would mimic their natural habitat in essence. So I would say go for something rectangular, and at least I think a 45p, in my opinion, is one of the best sizes for a betta fish. I think they definitely find it more stimulating. So another thing to remember is that the selectively bred fish that we get today, the betta splendens, have really delicate ornamental fins, and often struggle to swim in high flowing water, and this can cause them to nip their own fins. So make sure that your filter flow is low, so it's not just like blasting them all around the tank. Another highly contested argument is temperature. Now, I keep my bettas at about 26 degrees, 26, 27, and here is why. So they originate obviously from a very warm country, and whilst domestic breeding does mean that they can adapt to things outside of the norm, I don't think that the origins of a betta fish should be overlooked. They've survived and thrived there for so long for a reason, long before we kept them in the hobby. So I definitely think that we have to look at that and learn from that. So I don't have exact geographic temperatures of where bettas are found. If you do a little bit of research, the temperatures of water bodies can reach 30 degrees quite easily. And this is because Thailand and the surrounding places where bettas are found can reach temps up way high into the 40s quite easily. Even the colder months are probably like a UK summer some of the time. Rice paddies are these large, unobstructed, just open, vast land with nothing to block the sun. And if the crop hasn't grown in, that sun is just going to be blasting down on that water. So that water can quite easily reach high temperatures. Now, obviously, water and the ambient air temperature are going to be different. It's not going to be as warm. But the point is, the water has the potential to get up there potentially into 30 degrees Celsius. So a betta fish can survive these temperatures. So with cooler temperatures, these can slow down the betta fish's metabolism. And with slowed down metabolism comes inactivity and a loss of appetite. So I would say that the minimum temperature is 24 degrees, and I don't think that it should drop any lower than that, whilst the max is about 28 to 30. These obviously aren't ideals, these are survival ranges, but your betta won't be thriving, so it's definitely a balancing act. So colder water will make the betta's immune system low, and as I said, with this slowdown in immune system comes inactivity, loss of appetite, lethargy, which all makes them susceptible to disease or stress. So if your betta isn't eating or it's inactive, doesn't seem like it's swimming around a lot, could actually be your temperature, so check your temperature. Whereas on the other hand, hotter water can make them uncomfortable and essentially age quickly because their metabolism will increase. Also, bacteria in the water will increase and multiply a lot quicker as well, which again lends itself to problems. So you really are looking for the ideal temperature, which I would say is between 25.5 and 27 degrees Celsius. If the temperature drops for even the shortest time, it's almost guaranteed to be fatal. So, sad story, I had a betta fish called Aries, and I decided to get a new Oase Filter Smart Thermo, which is the filter with the built-in heater. And I just assumed that everything would be fine out the box, assumed it would work. So I set it all up, plugged it all in, came down the next day, and this was during winter and we were getting some really, really cold -3 degree nights. Came down and my betta fish looked half dead. He wasn't. As soon as I put my hand in, I realised, my God, this water is freezing. And as it turned out, that I'd just got a dodgy product, a faulty heater. So always check that your things are actually working when you buy them. And obviously I tried my best to revive him, raise the temperature slowly so as not to shock him, but unfortunately he passed away. So cold temperatures, especially sudden swings and sudden drops, can definitely be fatal to a betta fish. So yeah, always check that your instruments are working. Tank mates, does your betta need a friend? Well, for the most part, betta fish will spend their lives in solitude other than when mating. Obviously they will occupy waters that have other fish and other creatures, but they don't intentionally interact with them. There is lists online of fish that you can house with your betta or things that make good tank mates, but it can ultimately just come down to the fish. So you'll quite often hear people say that betta fish have their own personalities, which is very true, they do. So some you will be fine with shrimp, ottos, rasboras, and others will just see your shrimp as a really expensive snack. So it's definitely a case of observation and just getting to know your betta fish and seeing what type of personality that they have. So my fish here, Anubius, when I first got him, he was a bit of a psycho, very crazy. He would attack plants for no reason. Now he will go chase a shrimp, but I've never seen him successfully get one. There is 2 ottos in there as well, and he never bothers with them. Whereas I had a previous betta fish called Pepsi. Long-term viewers of the channel may remember Pepsi. He just wiped out shrimp in a day. One day I think I bought 6 Bloody Mary cherry shrimp were about £30 and they were gone 2 hours later, so yeah. Avoid other aggressive fish. Avoid other brightly coloured long-finned fish because you could attack them, perhaps mistaking them for a male. So guppies and tetras is probably something that you should avoid. Tetras are like mini piranhas. They could, they could potentially fin nip. So to be honest, I would avoid most tetras. Another thing to consider is that if you add fish to a tank that has only got your betta fish in and he's like established and happy in there, and then you go and put more fish in, he might see that as a threat and he might get stressed out. So if you're really intent on keeping multiple fish with your betta fish, you're probably better off adding him last rather than the other way around. But honestly, if you don't have a massive tank, I would just keep him solo because he'll be absolutely fine. You can be his friend. So diet. I'll keep this short. They are obligate insectivores, meaning that in the wild they will eat small crustaceans, insect larvae, insects, worms, and potentially even tiny fish, or at least the carcasses of small fish. So foods such as daphnia, brine shrimp, fruit flies, white worms, bloodworms on occasion because they don't really hold that much nutritional value. These all make quite good high quality protein foods. And if you want to go down the line of dried food as well, I kind of mix it up. I do use dried food as well, but I tend to use fluval bug bites. So anything that is basically only insect protein. Otherwise, you can cause bloating and things like that. Just heard a noise and thought I heard a fish jump, which is funny because we'll come to jumping in a second. Okay, so this video has primarily focused on males, so what about female betta fish? Well, they are 99.9% the same care as males, and make no mistake about it, females can be just as, if not more aggressive than male betta fish. Despite having sort of smaller fins, they will still appreciate slower flowing water, and females potentially are better at jumping than males because they have shorter fins, so they've got like less finnage weighing them down. The big question that everyone asks is, can I keep bettas together? And the answer is no, unless you are extremely experienced or you are a breeder that knows what you're doing and you have the space and the facilities and the capabilities of splitting all these fish up once they get to age. So definitely no, I would not recommend keeping fish together, especially males, because they will fight and they will fight to the death, no doubt about it. And when it's not mating season, a male and a female probably would too. To be honest, it's just a cruel thing to do. So just pick a fish that you like and be happy with him. Because for the most part, you can't really replicate a natural environment as much as you would like to. You can't replicate, the vast space of a stream or a rice paddy or wherever it may be. Unfortunately, there are people out there who do still train bettas to fight, these betta fight clubs. And the first rule about betta fight club: don't talk about fight club. And lastly, sororities, can or do they work? Yes, they can work. Should you do them? Definitely not. Here's why. Sororities only work when there is a natural pecking order, or if a natural pecking order is established. If there is one, then it's likely you're going to lose a few fish along the way, which isn't nice, and you've just wasted money. And if it isn't established, what you'll just have is a group of stressed out fish, and stressed fish have weaker immune systems and they're more likely to become compromised and become ill and get sick and potentially die. Betta fish are stressy fish. They're not really a beginner fish, and they do require a specific balance to attain homeostasis. So if you've got a group of aggressive fish that all want to be an alpha, what you've got is a royal rumble. So it's definitely not something that I would recommend that you do. A lot of people will kind of look for excuses or reasons to do it, or they'll see on YouTube or the internet people who have done it, and kind of use that as a bias, like a confirmation bias, to be like, oh, it's fine, I can do it. A lot of them probably aren't as successful as what they make them out to be. I think personally it's just cruel, but we'll leave it at that. But as far as aggression goes, I'm going to have to read this because I'm going to get this bit wrong, so I apologise. Aggression in bettas is understood to be due to them living in harsh environments. Food and mates can become scarce, and ever-changing water bodies make it hard for them to establish territories. Not having a territory makes them vulnerable, stressed, and in turn more aggressive. And having one gives them something to protect, again, essentially making them more aggressive. So it's either a nothing to lose or everything to live for mindset, which ultimately produces this aggression. These fish are inherently aggressive, and there's not really much that you can do about it other than providing a safe and stable home and environment for them. So lastly, this brings me on to pet shops and going out to buy a betta fish, because I personally think that pet shops, or fish stores, whatever you want to call them, haven't helped betta fish in this hobby at all. And I think a lot of them, don't get me wrong, there are some good ones, but I feel like there's more bad ones than good ones, and they haven't helped in the care of this hobby because they sell them in tiny cups. I've seen in America that they sell, is it Petco or PetSmart or wherever it is, sell them in these tiny cups, or they keep them in these like 1 litre racking systems. And people go in there and see that and think, oh, well, you've got it kept in there, so I can keep it kept in there. And kind of partly what you've got to remember is that isn't their forever home. That pet shop is kind of wanting to turn them round, so they're maybe not going to give them this massive home or this massive space or whatever. But people, unfortunately, will always try and take the shortcut or go for the easiest option or the smallest tank, especially if it's not necessarily like a hobby for them. They just want to fish, and aquascaping maybe isn't the hobby. Whereas for aquascapers, maybe we are more likely to provide that sort of space and that bigger tank for them because we want to aquascape it too. Whereas people who just want a pet fish are probably, and I'm not saying everybody, but they might be more inclined to put it in something smaller. And you will get a lot of pet shop stores, pet shops, kind of perpetuating this myth that they live in small bodies of water because it makes them easier to sell. If you turn around and say to somebody that you need this £100 tank and this £50 filter and this £30 heater and X amount of plants and it's going to cost you £300, or you say just get this tiny, 5 litre cube with a plastic plant, what's going to be easier to sell to a lot of people if you're asking for £300 or £100? So I think that pet shops really, really have kind of fucked up on a massive scale when it comes to the care and the welfare of betta fish. So we have so much information available to us today on the internet. Granted, it's a bit of a minefield. There is so much opposing information, contrasting information, conflicting information. And it is just a case of just sort of weeding through it, which is what I've tried to do to produce today's video and what I've kind of done to care for my betta fish. So there is kind of no excuse for poor care and unsatisfactory conditions because there is stuff out there, and we have seen how we can help them thrive in our own care. So yeah, I really hope this video has been helpful. It is something that does anger me a little bit actually, is betta care, because you unfortunately do see so many really poor excuses and really poor sort of habitats and tanks that people are keeping these in. I mean, just an example, if you go on Amazon and look for things like fish bowls or decorative jars, and you'll just have lists of these jars that are no bigger than this glass of water, and they put fish in them, and it's like people will see that and believe that and think that you can keep a fish in them. And I've seen some awful things, and I just think it's really sad. Like, at the end of the day, all I really care about is the animal. If you want to waste your money time and time again just buying a fish because it keeps dying, then more fool you. You should just learn how to look after it in the first place. There's just no need for cruelty. So yeah, I am quite passionate about that. So if it felt like a rant or a shout, I'm sorry, but I just want people to be able to have the right information, look after the fish in the best way possible. And it's just rewarding in itself, just seeing your fish happy, interacting with the little world that you've created for it. So if you have any questions or you think that I've got something wrong, please just leave a comment. Like, I'd be happy to talk about it, because I very well could be wrong on things, and that's fine. But let's just have that discussion, and then if other people see it, they can sort of see where we're coming from. And if you've got anything to add, anything that you feel like I've missed out, again, please leave it in the comments. And if you know anybody who is getting a betta fish or interested in a betta fish, you know, share this video with them, help them sort of come to understand where they've come from, the history of them, and how we can use looking at that to provide better care for them today. So thank you so much for watching, guys, and I will see you on the next one. Peace out.